Okay, let's get the show on the road. I thought my waiting caption is quite clever. Take a look, take a look, take a look. Oh.
Quite clever. Quite clever indeed.
But it's like only clever if you know the board game clever.
Which is fine. As it is, as it will be. I am loading the monitors. So for those who are just joining us,
the chat's still borked.
Yeah, unfortunately. We just finished watching Nick's little stream, which was pretty awesome.
And Nick's on Restream already, so that's interesting. So we can invite Nick soon to us as a guest, because you need to be on Restream to be invited as a guest. One of those. I can't invite directly from Facebook Live and be like, wow, 4 people already, not counting the monitor.
Yeah, no. I was about to click an old episode.
Lounge Jazz.
But yeah.
Toby is continually bombarded by
hey, David.
Recommendations to follow jazz radio streams on YouTube because of the one video he clicked, because we were curious at what it looked like.
But again, it's funny how streaming is becoming the way people communicate, or at least reach out.
Yeah, and
rather than directly contacting people.
True. I mean, because there's that social barrier that we always have a difficulty overcoming, and like it feels awkward sometimes to reach out and call people out of the blue. It's like it's that whole subculture of people who repeatedly tweet about, oh my God, why don't people text before they call? You know, so there is that culture of people don't, or at least established they don't like being called. But then people want to connect socially while in lockdown, and therefore streaming has become a thing. You could just record videos and post them, but then you miss out on potential limited live interaction, and it doesn't feel like a conversation. It just feels like you're making a fool of yourself in front of a camera. As a live stream, you're making a fool of yourself in front of the camera, and other people get to tell you look like a fool real time. So I don't know what's better or worse.
So we'll be starting in a few minutes. As always, if you are there, please like the video now and share the link so others can find it. If you have friends who you think might be interested in our topic, which will be all about a certain board game, then spread the signal now. And
the board game that Toby's like, it's really light. It's easy.
No, it's quite easy.
It's like it's only 30 minutes. ... per player.
Francis says, Toby agreed. I want to start streaming the games I play just to sort of hang out and not just a call. We do that actually outside of the show.
It's not a show content, but we would leave a Facebook Live on or
open
a Facebook meeting room, or we've tried with a Google Meet
while we're playing board games or while we're just hanging out or drinking.
Yeah.
There's that desire to let people have the freedom to show up, which we can't do in lockdown. So there's that joy of knowing, hey, guess what?
Yeah.
Passing by.
And I rarely like try to direct invite people unless they specifically tell me that I can direct invite them when we do lives like that. And it's weird. It's weird, huh? Like, why don't we? Why is it such an issue? And then people are free to just ignore the invitation. But even just the act of inviting feels like so much social pressure, right? It's totally like a big subtopic happening in the introduction. We're totally repeating shirts already. We're doing our Jaja shirts because there's just so much going on, and we figured it's a best depiction of all the many characters and through the ages. I don't know. It has limited connection.
Yeah. But I guess it's 9 o'clock, so now it's a good time and I need to start.
You always struggle with the S's in that statement. Like, where do they go? So hey,
this is Toby.
Are you sure? And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, the little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
Our energy's a little down today. This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. We will be spending the next 30
all over the
minutes
place today.
talking about
Through the Ages,
a new story of civilization. And take note, it has to be a new story of civilization because there is an older edition of this game.
Yep. Okay, Toby. So, as the caption says, what is Through the Ages?
The best way to describe this game, which was created by Vlaada Chvátil, is that it is a board game similar to games such as Civilization.
Hence the civilization in the title, but it's not an officially licensed product.
Mhm.
You know, it's not from the Civilization family.
Yes.
There is a Civilization board game,
Yes.
though, right? And we've never played it.
So typically when you talk about Civilization games, we call those the 4X games, wherein it's all about expanding, exploration, expanding, exploration, extermination, and I forgot the last one. But this game still tries to capture those
I don't know.
those experiences in a very different format than what you would expect. This game does not have a map.
Yes.
This game
you don't like conquer territory. It's not area control.
This game does not have multiple minis to represent different factions. In fact, what this game does is approach things in a quite elegant way that allows you to use minimal resources, or rather,
minimal game components.
Yes, to effectively do so many things.
Yes.
So again, it's a civilization game wherein you play from what we know to be the very first age. I think it is called the Middle Ages.
No,
and
I think it's like
ancient,
or
ancient, I think. And then it goes all the way to the modern day. You play through different ages wherein you try to develop your civilization as best as you can. There are different areas to develop it, and we'll get to that more in detail later. There are different leaders that you can call upon, different wonders to build, and different paths to victory.
This game is not a light game. Mm-hmm. It is it's a game for one to 4 players.
Yes.
There is a solo mode.
2 to 4.
2 to 4. There's no solo mode. Okay, so it's 2 to 4 players. In our estimations, once you have a good grasp of the rules, it will probably take you an average of 30 minutes per player to play this game. So it's about a 2-hour game with a full 4 players. But if you compare it to a Civilization game, that's pretty short. So that's not bad. That's not bad at all as far as a tabletop experience is concerned. So what? Where do we want to begin in talking about it? I think let's talk about the abacus. Let's talk about the board. Can we borrow the board? Okay.
Player colors are there as well.
Oh, okay, cool. So your player board looks like this, and it doesn't look super exciting. It has images of cards that are like hard-coded on it. It has your starting government, which is, of course, despotism. And then it has a very detailed explanation of what we call the production phase. But this board conveys so much of the game because you'll be putting cubes on these different card spaces, and that will depict the buildings you have, whether it's for agriculture, whether it's for harvesting bronze or other resources. Philosophy is for developing science. Theology, right, is the other one?
Yes.
For developing, it's really happiness and culture. And then you have you have your military side. That's your basic starting unit. And from there, as you grow, you'll stack cards accordingly and things. I don't know how to quickly summarize this rule set.
I can take a stab at it.
Okay.
So part of the game is learning to balance the development of all what we call your technologies, as well as managing your resources, which is this blue field here, and your population, which is this yellow field here. As you grow in population, which means moving cubes from the yellow area to your playable area here, your worker pool, you can then use resources, which is represented by the blue area, that are then turned to cubes in the specific appropriate spot.
And they stop being people, they start becoming buildings.
So when a blue cube, for example, moves here to agriculture, it is now officially food. If the blue cube moves instead here to bronze, it's now officially stone. And those are our generic terms to represent
whatever resources
to
you need.
Build stuff, and food to get more people out of your population. But as you move through population, you'll notice there are different sections, different containers. That represents the need to maintain happiness to a certain level.
Which is very civilization.
If you fail to maintain the happiness of your population as you hit that spot, people revolt. And what happens? You cease production, you start losing points. So this intricate balance of developing yourself, pulling people out from the population pool, and advancing your technologies is already a challenge in itself. But you're doing this while all the other players are doing the same.
Yeah.
And complicating that path is the fact that the cards are laid out in a
tableau.
It's not that visible here because of the angle. In a nice tableau that moves as you go through the game.
Sort of a marketplace of sorts.
Similar to how tiles are laid out in Suburbia.
Suburbia.
The cards are presented and the players are able to purchase them with their action points each round. But since there are limited numbers of cards in each round, or in each age to be more specific, players are able to block each other from gaining certain technologies.
And because it moves, the row moves quickly. And in fact, the row will always move because depending on number of players, a certain number of cards at the beginning of the row will always be thrown away at the end of every turn. Then it's really going to be, if the cards are in range for you to acquire now, you better get them because they may not be there later.
It's this annoying, but at the same time fulfilling and exciting moments of staring at each card that's available, knowing you want it, or even worse, staring at the card you know the other players want. And even if you don't want it, you'll choose to grab it just to deny them that card.
That's how you play like Toby.
However, unlike other games where you can actually discard cards you don't need, in this game, you are stuck with those cards until they expire. Because cards that are of a certain age, well, to be official, an age earlier than the age that just ended, and that's a confusing sounding sentence, are discarded whether or not you are done with them. Which means, if you are in a certain age and you haven't completed building it, you will lose it if you haven't built it at a certain point in time. I guess now is the time to talk about these cards more in depth.
Technology, but first, Francis has a question that 4X games have been here since the 70s. Does this game have any particular innovations in the genre?
I think the biggest innovation it has accomplished is the fact that it still captures that feel without presenting it the way all the other games have done so for the longest time.
Yeah.
Most 4X games talk about exploration with official, with a map that has a fog of war that opens up. And some do it as there's a distance you reach based on turns. Others do it as you have step points or movement points to spread out, like in Heroes of Might and Magic. Other games, on the other hand, even require specific technologies. So you can't explore beyond the sea until you build your boats. You can't cross mountains unless you're a specific faction.
And a lot of these things, these kind of rules we're citing, tend to apply to video games that capture the 4X experience. Through the Ages is a board game that managed to do this in its own unique way, without a world map, without territories. So that I think that's the main innovation, that it refined the 4X experience into a rather tight board game and then fit the experience in 2 hours.
The second innovation I would count is that almost all 4X games basically have, I don't know what to call it, a skill tree. Your tech tree, which shows what you can develop from this technology to the next, and so on and so forth. Through the Ages does have that tech tree, but you're all sharing it. And you're all grabbing slots on that tech tree. So if I were, for example, a starting player in Bronze, and Rocky's a starting player in Bronze, and then the next technology comes out, which is Iron, but then Rocky grabs it, I won't be able to develop Iron. And that is a blow to my progress, but it doesn't necessarily mean I lose the game, because later on other technology may come in.
Yeah, or Toby just makes more bronze mines and makes up for it's less efficient, but he can still generate the same amount of production.
And we have seen victories coming from people who never developed agriculture and bronze because they were still able to manage things out well. So, technologies. The cards are used
Wait,
as the
officially, it's a technology when it has a light bulb.
yes,
You have a leader and a wonder in your hand.
yes, because
Okay.
I was gonna explain the difference.
Okay,
So the cards are used as the way that the game progresses through the ages. There are different kinds of cards, and as you can see here, from the upper corner, some do not have what we see as a light bulb symbol, and others do. That's how you identify when cards are technologies, or in this case, leaders and wonders. Leaders are your green cards, and wonders are your purple cards. Wonders represent everything from amazing landmarks to developments which no one else will be able to do. Leaders are, I guess, to put it plainly, if you don't have a leader in an age, you are not maximizing your turn.
yeah, it is possible to play the game without a leader, but you're missing out on key bonuses, other
Mhm.
ways to score points, and all that.
Many technologies are meant to upgrade the basic board. So as you can see here, here, iron upgrades bronze.
It looked very similar to the board representation earlier.
But unlike most games wherein an upgrade immediately replaces it, Through the Ages instead has it shown as a possible option that you can then develop towards. So it's like this on the board. You still are able to go for bronze because it's still cheaper to build based on the cost here. But then you can pay the difference to upgrade it, and every token on it now counts as 2 rather than 1. So that's when many of the strategic planning happens. When you buy your technologies, do you bide your time with the smaller technologies and leave the other players to squabble over things? Or do you leap forward with the new one and suddenly are more efficient than everyone else?
And most likely, if you're going to leap forward, then you're going to quote unquote, slow down for a few turns as you upgrade your structures, your buildings to the new tech,
Mhm.
so that you can start taking advantage when everybody else is probably buying more cards or
Yes.
building more things. Everybody's moving because civilization waits for no man.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, there is food and stone. But then if you look at the other side of the board, we have the light bulb, which is science,
Yes.
which is what you use to develop technologies. And the last one is culture.
The liar and the happy face. So culture. Oh, sorry, Captain. Ba-bam! Ultimately, the victory points in Through the Ages is culture points. Everything is translated into culture. Whether, like if you think in traditional civilization terms, if you win as a cultural victory, as a military victory, a
Mhm.
science victory, in the end, this all gets converted to a culture point equivalent, regardless of what path you take. And yes, the game supports multiple paths to victory.
Mhm.
But everything boils down to culture because they have to keep it simple. At least
Mhm.
that there is a single language that everybody can compare their progress about.
Sorry, I was about to burp. This is what
Um,
happens when you just had dinner before the show.
there are structures that let you build culture in itself,
Mhm.
but more often than not, you're probably going to see big culture bonuses from things like wonders or from certain event cards that are played, and that's a whole other system in itself.
The last way that you can get culture, other than the things that you build, is through military engagements that we call aggressions and war.
Wars. We have a captain for war.
So, to discuss war, one must realize the difference between an aggression and war.
Military.
It's all about the military system. Military is a rating that you have based on the number of military forces that you have developed. Again, we look at the board because there they are. It's there.
So if you have a warrior, then you have 1 strength. If you have 2 warriors, you have 2 strength, and that's sort of it. And then later on, you'll get better units like knights. Suddenly, they're also 2 strength. I thought it would be a bigger jump, but they're not.
Yeah. As the ages pass, the different types of warriors progress. There are basically 3 types of warriors in the game. You have the people or the soldiers. You have the knights or the riders. And then you have the
Horsemen.
last one, which is the catapults /
Artillery.
artillery. By modern day, a 4th one comes in, which are planes, and they do
Planes!
not have any relationship to the others. And this is important because, like technologies, you are able to upgrade. So you might start with, let's say, 3 warriors to have a strength of 3. But later, when you develop soldiers, I forget if that was the next card or infantry.
No, first off, Anyway,
Yeah. I forget the name.
there's a medieval age one.
You can then spend to upgrade
Footmen.
them to make them better soldiers. Even more interesting is the game provides what we call tactic cards,
Yes.
which allow you to reap more military bonuses in terms of strength.
if you meet the requirements,
If you
which is
meet
going to
the
be like 2 soldiers is like three soldiers together as a troop or something, or a legion.
And if you have that tactic active and you actually have 6 soldiers available, so your 6 soldiers give you 6 strength, and then you get the 3 bonus twice.
Yep.
So suddenly you have 12 strength, and that is an amazing feat in this game. When aggressions are played, the opposing player is allowed to retaliate, to defend themselves by using certain shield cards or by having other bonuses that might come into play.
But even outside like direct aggression or war, there are events that evaluate different civilizations based on their military strength. So whenever it says the weaker or the stronger civilization, then suddenly I have immigrants leaving my weaker country and going to a more prosperous nation. So you can't entirely ignore your military strength, which is like any civilization game. Because even if you're not playing an aggressive, I want to conquer the world type strategy,
You need to keep your defenses.
you
up
need to
some
keep your
extent.
defenses. So
This also comes in with the event cards, which can be terrible when the event says something like the 2 weakest players lose this, or the 2 strongest players get this bonus. Francis asks if there is a rock, paper, scissors system for the infantry cavalry siege.
Nope.
That is quite common when it comes to computer games because they like to differentiate how these units are different with that. But in this game, since a lot of the technology is about being able to grab it before others don't, they minimize the presence of any such comparative
it's just the
measures.
attack values, and then the only value of having different types is to meet tactic requirements.
The closest thing to that, in terms of rock, paper, scissors thing, is that if you are still using older units, a tactic might be less effective.
There's tactics like if a tactic of a certain age is used, but then you're using older units, then it's half strength. The tactic is half strength bonus.
So with all that, how does that differentiate from wars? While aggressions are all about playing cards to defend yourself when you're attacked, wars work differently. In wars, one player, let's say me, plays a card and announces,
Normally Toby.
I'm declaring war on Rocky. What happens when that declaration is made? Nothing yet. Because
It's a little anticlimactic.
Rocky then has a turn to ramp up defenses, to build his military, to do whatever he needs to do, so that when it goes back to my turn, that's when we compare strength.
Yeah, and no card bonuses come into play. It's just strength to strength.
So it's all about making sure that when the declaration is made, you're ready to retaliate. And it's also about, if you're going to declare, you've anticipated if your target can protect themselves.
Yes. And I rush to protect myself every time.
There are different kinds of war. Some wars can warrant you culture points, which is the common way to ramp up and try to win. But there are also wars that steal population.
Or culture.
Or wars that steal science.
Yes.
Or even wars that just
steal resources.
Steal the science cards that you've developed.
Oh, yes, you can get the equivalent of
And
science.
it's in many ways, these sort of represent those other battles in civilization wherein you might do propaganda and people transfer to you.
Or the different bonuses that when you defeat an opponent, and then you get to choose like, oh, I'll get a technology, or I'll get money, or I'll get a city.
The closest thing to a surprise, as Francis was asking if there were surprises, is the fact that in a multiplayer game, or actually even in just a 2-player game, you aren't certain when a person can call war. Because there might be times, looking just objectively at the stats, okay, I have strength 1, Rocky has strength 10. Why won't he call war, right? But that's because he doesn't have the card yet. Or that might be because he doesn't have the points to make sure he can play it, because there are certain prerequisites to declare war.
Or he's staring at that huge bank of unused stone in your production queue and knows that even if I declare war, you're going to pivot and create units, and it's going to be a problem.
And the last reason, because it's a psychological battle. He knows you're now scared of any aggressions in war, so you're going to waste your next few turns building your military, and he's culture buildings, science buildings, while it's there. So that's how this game approaches war and the military question. We can talk about wonders. Wonders are purple cards, and in Civ, wonders are always a joy to build.
Yes, and they also have very, very big bonuses.
This game similarly tries to have such bonuses. For example, this one, St. Peter's Basilica, allows you to get 2 culture per turn and a happiness token. In addition, the power of this card is that any other cards, well, not all, but certain cards you have that also give happiness, give an extra happiness all of a sudden.
You sure make people super happy, which is kind of like what St. Peter's Basilica does in the original Civilization.
Other wonders seem double-edged. For example, there's one which grants you a great boost in culture, gives you extra actions per turn, but then drops your happiness. I think this is communism.
That's a government. Okay, but yeah, then but it's and there are things like what's this, the Intercontinental Railroad, which suddenly increased. Once you build it, it doubles your best production, which doesn't seem like much. It's one extra building essentially, but if you've been investing in a complex tech tree, especially for your stone production, then suddenly you're producing a lot more because they're carting in resources from further away. So
and that
it's
card,
awesome.
in addition, also gives you a boost in military strength because since you have railroads, it's faster for you to mobilize units here and there.
I like that logic, but oh my god, and that's why Toby and I always argue over Intercontinental Railroad. So it's fun.
So wonders are great, but by themselves they will not help you win the game. What makes you win the game is how the wonders interact with the leaders.
Yeah,
Michelangelo, for example, turns every happiness icon you have into a
culture
developing.
So put that with St. Peter's Basilica, and oh my gosh. And last thing I wonders though is also think about is that they're difficult to build. They are resource intensive, and then each little number represents at least one action and that much resources spent to build that phase of the wonder. You can only have one wonder under construction at any time. So if you gank one and not build it for 3 turns and then see another wonder that you want, you can't grab it until you complete that wonder.
And worse, wonders get more expensive as you build them. After you built your first wonder, any future wonder you build will have to add the number of existing wonders you have to the cost of building it. It's a great balance. It sounds complicated, but the moment you're there playing it, it all just fits into place.
Francis says that you have notes. So yeah, so there are no surprise Pearl Harbor kind of war trigger. No war is like clearly announced, wait 1 turn. So that's it. And then Civ games are always overwhelming to come into with the crazy amount of information you need to know and keep track of. It's through the ages easy to get into. It's not necessarily easy. It's still going to need work, I think. And then we invest a lot of time in teaching people to play the first time. But I guarantee that before the end of your first game, you will totally get it. And you will have a strategy, at least for phases 2 and 3.
In many ways as well, unlike normal Civ games and the video games, wherein it's all about having to reference and memorize skill trees and tech values, here, it's all about just looking at the stats. And you'll notice how in the basics, it tends to be just 1s. In the first level of upgrade, they move to 2s, which tells you the next 2 levels is a 3 and a 4.
No, it's not. It jumps to like a 5. But
so there's, 5 for the modern.
Yeah.
But there's no need to like super study everything. There are some cards that are a bit more text heavy, especially with the wonders. But you only really need to read them as you go along. And maybe if you think you want to master them, so you learn them all, it's still far less than normal video games.
And there's no point in only trying to do a single strategy every time because you don't know what cards are going to come your way when it's your turn. Quick touch on leaders. We're running out of time.
Yes.
Leaders are super fun. We said they're not required, but then, oh my god, they add so much flavor because they also kind of dictate the strategy you're going to do. If you're going to work with Leonardo da Vinci, who gives bonuses for science and libraries and the like, then you are going to probably build more science buildings and try to increase that aspect of yours. If your leader is Genghis Khan, then everybody's going to notice that your military is growing exponentially.
And whenever you're the strongest, you're actually gaining culture for free. So they will now be forced to raise their military to stop you from doing so.
You start an arms race. So your leader will dictate your strategy, but a leader cannot live forever, representing the passage of time. And thus, when leaders do, you're also always on the look for the next leader who may or may not be a similar play style. So as you go through the different ages or phases of the game, you will find you're working on different stuff. You may have a military beginning, a cultural center and
Mhm.
suddenly a science run at the end. I don't know. It really depends on what cards you end up acquiring for yourself.
As you play the game more and more, you might find yourself developing specific strategies, or you might find yourself following certain patterns that you get used to. You might always start focusing on building your food development first, because you know everyone else is focused on grabbing those cards that allow them to build rock. Or you might realize you quietly like just building your science stronghold. And later on in the game, all of a sudden, you grab technology cards and build 3, 4 of them in a single turn. It's flexible in that sense, and it's amazing how, as you play the game, you discover there are different ways you can try things you thought you already knew.
Touching very quickly on the passage of time, this whole age marker thing, it
Mhm.
really just represents that as you finish an age deck, totally new cards going to come in. So we move on from our little, nice antiquarian building. Suddenly, oh, we're kind of medieval. We got horses and stuff. And then, oh my God, movie theaters. Charlie Chaplin is
Mhm.
walking through. There are only there's only the starting age and then 3 phases for the game.
Mhm.
3 ages for the game.
Yes.
But there's just so much inherent story
Yes.
based on what's there.
Yes.
And then you will end up with a hodgepodge civilization that, like, I have a cathedral
And
for
mo-
my religion
and movie theaters.
and movie theaters,
but
but
the people are still eating from agriculture because they never learned how
yeah,
to do.
and they have a gladiatorial arena for entertainment. I don't know why. So those little stories, and we've seen sort of things like that in the original Civilization computer
Mhm.
game, and how that translates here is quite well done, and we super appreciate it.
Another system that is affected by the passage of time, which makes this game interesting, is that if you are playing with more than 2 players, you can forge pacts.
Ooh,
And pacts
pacts and
allow you
alliances.
to make alliances and deals with other players. And these aren't non-card based activities. The cards that are the pact cards actually add certain mechanics that help you. For example, there might be a pact wherein I declare I am obviously your superior, and
It's
therefore
not a pact. It's terrible.
and therefore I shall now start gaining extra culture. But in effect, you lose 1 culture per turn, but no one now can declare war on you.
Yeah, suddenly, like, it's your big brother scenario, and I'm this benevolent, nation that's not protecting this other nation.
Or another early pact in the game is wherein we open our borders and we are all friends. So we both get +1 military strength because we're helping each other out. But if one chooses to attack the other, that person gets +2. So there's that inherent.
There is a bonus for betrayal and breaking the pact, but it takes an action to make and break pacts. It's hilarious.
But it's amazing how it develops those inherent stories, and the passage of time erodes the pact eventually.
Yes.
So it's possible that you still think, yeah, we're still friends, but the other player realizes, oh, we're in the next age, the pact is gone. And next thing you know, an attack strikes you when you least expect it.
War! So, France had a quick question. Fastest playtime to longest session.
So a starting player will probably, groups of starting players would probably take an hour and a half for each player.
And not that bad. Maybe an hour. Well, okay. It depends on who's teaching them. If you're learning on your own, it's going to take a while. If we're teaching you and guiding you through, I think we'll keep you at an hour. And then, but we'll only be able to streamline it to about 30 minutes because even though you understand the system, figuring out strategy is really what bogs down time. We have played with some very experienced players, and it still takes them a while to decide on their final actions because the balance is just so delicate.
And the fact is, even if it's not your turn, you cannot help but pay attention because you need to see what they're grabbing. You need to see what they're planning. While the game does have an open hand, you can see what everyone has. There is a closed hand when it comes to the military cards, which again adds that feel of surprise and unexpected threats. So that's through the ages. And beyond just the base game,
it's a caption. No, there is an expansion that we just acquired, which is the reason for this, which is just new leaders and wonders. So it adds an additional mix of leaders and new wonder cards for the game, but you have to replace existing ones.
The game
Crackers.
we will ignore that. The game allows you to use the new set of cards independently. It allows you to combine it with the base set of cards if you desire, and it offers new leaders, new wonders, and
New military cards. It's the meaty stuff of the game. That's tricky. And then beyond this, though, there is an amazing app experience for Through the Ages that will let you play the board game. So thus we have come full circle. That it's obviously this game was inspired by Civilization, the PC game, and then it became a board game, and that board game is now a computer experience again. You can also play it on iPads and the like, but it's great. They actually got the. We got to play the Wonders expansion there first,
Yes.
before our physical copy arrived. So
The beauty of the digital app, if you choose to get it, is that it also has built-in AI players, which has variable levels of difficulty, allowing you to practice and play.
oh wow, Jaja just dropped by to say hi. Hi,
Hey, Jaja, to play at a comfortable level. It also has tons of scenario challenges.
Oh my god!
Everything from a challenge wherein all the AI opponents have more strength than you at the very start of the game.
Or you have this one leader for all time.
Yes.
And you choose one leader.
The immortal leader.
And it's your leader forever, but it can get removed, right?
Yes.
Through military cards.
There's another one wherein it's a longer game, so you have double of all the action cards, which then forces you to consider now your tactics. There's even one wherein all the opponents start with like 90 culture ahead of you.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
But
they're really great scenarios.
And if you love this game and you can't find yourself gathering a group often enough to play it, the app is fantastic. I highly recommend you check it out.
Yeah, I mean, and as much as like I love this game, but it's a lot of work. It's an investment of time if we decide to play it. Many times it will feel like it is the only game we're gonna play for the day if we're gonna choose it in a game night. Especially if we have to teach new players. So it's tricky. It's not as easy to just jump in and go, hey, let's play Through the Ages. But we do still recommend it. It is a game experience that we love teaching people how to play because it means that we get to play games more in the long run, and we like to cultivate more Through the Ages players. Toby. But the app is a great way maybe to get people warmed up into the game before they come to the table, so that they can figure out the experience. We haven't really experimented with hey, play the app first and then see if we can figure it out before we do an in-person game. Other notes, Toby?
I guess for me to wrap it up, this is quite frankly one of the games I really love playing. It's often a game I go through at least once a week. Only because I find myself always enjoying the chance to try different tactics, to try different things, and in the app to even try to hit certain achievements, because it has, beyond just the challenges, funny achievements. You might have an achievement wherein it's all about the fine arts and you have to end the game with this, and this. Or it might be achievements wherein it's about performance, wherein you lose an aggression, lose a war, have the lowest military strength, but still win the game.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because it forces you to think of ways to play the game or ways to approach the game in a very different way.
And note that this game was released sometime back in 2015, but has consistently remained in the top 10 of Board Game Geek strategy or overall games and strategy games. So there is a reason why this game is so good, and it stays up there in the ranking. Oh my gosh, we missed a bunch of comments over on YouTube.
My shares, Happiness Revolt. Hoping to get a card in the turn before it gets discarded. I'm so sorry I only saw this now. Tanya loves to build her military and attack, so I keep eyeing her power. Yes, they play often on the app.
Yeah, the app has multiplayer.
Yes, it has online multiplayer, so you don't have to be together to play. And it also has local multiplayer if you play with your housemates. That's Kremlin, the one that I described earlier.
Oh, the unhappiness one, yes.
So yeah, that's Through the Ages, and it might have seemingly taken us ages to go through it.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's definitely a lot more deep system in the game. We've barely talked about events and how that little mechanic works. But in the end, you just gotta experience it. You gotta experience the game. It's definitely one of our favorite strategy board games.
Mhm.
We didn't even talk about the mechanics as according to Board Game Geek. Like normally we list out, oh, it is a game that features
Yeah, we just jumped into it's
card
like civilization.
drafting. So like it's action points, auction bidding,
Card
auction,
drafting.
card drafting, and income. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, mechanisms.
There's that tableau building, which is basically the engine building thing that we love to do when you start balancing things out. But that will just start us again on a whole new.
And that's 30 minutes.
Yes, that's 30 minutes. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
Yep. If you have questions for us, games that you hope we'll talk about or are curious about, I don't know, game styles, whatever, or non-game topics, because we talk about just about anything. Feel free to fill out the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, all Toby No Shade, or RG Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, that's baduypride.com, for previous episodes, photos, and snippets of our life.
Yay! Of course, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you think about Through the Ages, a new story of civilization. Or are you a diehard fan of Through the Ages, a story of civilization, the older edition of the game? Be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.